But if one of my units in Pittsburgh goes down, then a unit goes in Homer City goes down, then a unit in Grampian goes down. Guess what? That from Pittsburgh to Grampian, you're talking a 4-hour drive just to fix a single family, right? So that's why I am actively liquidating my single family units.
On everybody, welcome back to the Scale Nation podcast. I am your host Manny with my co-host here Zach. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, or when I was looking into real estate, when I was trying to figure out how to get started, right, is the investment property types. So when you're getting into investment, especially real estate, there's multiple types that you can do. There's hotels, people buy hotels. Those are actually investment properties. Old folk homes. I don't know if you got into any of this, Zach, like old folk, I forget what they're called. Assisted living. Yep, assisted living types, as well as the butter that I'm in, just regular old rental unit properties. There's multiple types here. There is single family, which is most common. I think this is where most people are getting started, right? Let's say you buy a second home or third home, or you're leaving one property to get another one, and you're like, I can probably just rent that out instead of selling it. That's how most people get started. And that single family properties are in my opinion, the most common type of multifamily properties. They're also my favorite because of they're easiest to sell. Single family properties don't really stay on the market long, and you have a lot of buyers. The other two types are small multifamily properties. These are your 1 to 4 units, because anything above 5 is considered commercial here in the U.S. So that's something that you guys need to take account of when you're looking at your units. If you see more than 4, then that's basically considered commercial, and you have to get a different type of lending for that. And that actually bridges into the other type of multifamily, large multifamily. This is your 5+, 10s, 20s, 150s. That's the end game. I say that for me, that's the end game. I want to get to the large multifamily units, because that's when you start to see your work compound. A friend of mine told me that because when you have single families or small multifamilies, especially when you're buying in a market, they're all over the place. So when you come back to large multifamily, you can get like 100 people under one roof. And that really minimizes your maintenance costs and stuff that you have for those types of properties. So that's
much
why
easier to
my
manage
end game,
than the single families.
Exactly. That's why my end game is large multifamilies. So let's go into and break down the pros and cons of each one, right? So let's start with single family. I think, Zach, did you ever own any single family units?
That's how I started. Yeah, I started with 5 single family rentals. Now, granted, it was one purchase. It was 5 units on one lot, but it was all single families.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wait, so if that's right, but it's 5 units on one lot, still considered, it's all right next to each other. Units. I'm thinking I have some friends
addresses. Yeah, and they are each single family units. There's 5 houses, so I got 5 roofs, I got 5 water heaters, I got 5 furnaces, I got 5. Of everything.
Yeah, and then that's what we're talking about with the maintenance, right? Because there's so many of them, you have to deal with dealing with all of them. If one furnace goes down for that one property, and it's like instead of just one furnace for all of the properties. Yeah. So yeah, do you have any, like, in your opinions, what are the pros of single family? You start with yours, and I'll tell you mine.
It's so much easier to rent. Every time I have a vacant single family unit, I have it rented within, as long as it's rent ready, within a couple of weeks. It's so much easier to rent. And my thumb blows up because I get them listed on Facebook Marketplace or on the listing sites. I'm doing showings weekly, daily. So yeah, there's a lot of interest in those. And that would be probably the best and easiest way I can describe single families is the upside is I haven't had a lot of vacancy in my single families. Really haven't.
Really? Wow. Oh. Yeah, I like single families because not only are they easier to rent, they're easier to sell. So it's the reason why is volume, right? It's not a lot of people out there looking for multifamily. And
right.
Especially when you get to a large
multifamily, you're looking at the people who want to get into investing, get into house hacking.
Exactly.
So when you have investors.
Exactly. So when you have like a single family, you got a bunch of people looking into it, just a common Joe, as we say. That's my pro of single families. But I would say that single families also make your maintenance a little bit easier, depending on how many you have.
Well, that's just it. It doesn't make maintenance that much easier at all. It's a lot more work. Like I just said, you got 5 rooms, 5 buildings that you would maintain. Ultimately, your team is then spread out over a larger area. So when I have
that's if you have a bunch, right? That's if you have a bunch, right? If you have like 1 unit, 1 or 2 units, you don't have to worry about multiple units being down if the furnace goes down. If the one furnace goes down, it's tied to that 1 unit. So okay, I can just get that fixed, right? And if you have, and technically it's like the HVAC system and all the appliances stuff are all the same, just because it's tied to that property. So if something happens at that property, it's going to affect everyone there. You don't know. This is something that I've never gotten into. This is a good question for you. Like, let's say your furnace goes down in a large multifamily, do you automatically know how many tenants are affected from it, or do you need to like figure that out based
on? Well, that's
just
it. So the 48 unit I have at Grace, each one of those, I have 48 furnaces. I have 48 water heaters. Each unit has individually serviced by their water heater, by their furnace.
Yeah, so you don't have like those boiler rooms.
I don't have a big boiler room. No, no, I do not. No, even the 18 unit has its own furnace for every unit, but it does have one water heater for each building. So if a water heater goes down, then I have 6 units that are down in hot water.
Oof. But that's easier to manage, right? Like you mentioned, one, get that fixed. But then it's also, I don't know when it comes to parts, right? When it comes to like getting that fixed. I never know, like, for example, the boiler room for those really large units, those are, from what I heard, really hard to get parts for. Like really hard.
The older ones, the older ones are really difficult to get parts for.
And then it's like very expensive to even replace. We're talking maybe $20,000, $30,000.
I don't have much experience with the big, large boiler rooms, but yeah, from my experience in working in construction, working in the field, I worked on a building that it's a commercial office space. So it is actually here in Indiana. It's a very large building, and the whole building is heated by one boiler. And you actually had I couldn't work on that boiler because it took someone who had specialized knowledge as a pipe fitter to do that. And then the AC system in the whole building was actually so large that it needed its own for whatever it was. It was a tank in the roof of this building that had to be purged, and all kinds of stuff had to happen, and you had a specialized knowledge.
I get what you're saying. It's like that main AC thing was for the entire building.
Yeah.
When you say purged, they needed to like clean the pipes or something?
Every year they had to turn it off and start it back up again through a process, and it would be about $5,000 to $10,000 for the company to come out and do the process to start the AC back up again.
Wow.
It got to the point the owner actually went out and we bought just window ACs for the offices. Yep.
Wow. That's crazy. And that's a pro for the another pro for the single family. You can probably just buy one of those window AC units or those mini splits, and not really that difficult to install, right?
Well, no, I mean, even this big building, I actually advocated for getting mini splits into each of these office spaces, and the owner wouldn't go for it. Yeah, it was more expensive than window
More
unit.
Expensive in the beginning, but over the long term, in my opinion, I feel like not only that, it makes the property look a little bit better instead of having these things sticking out of the windows. Every single window you see it. But
exactly.
Yeah. And then when you try to resell it, they're going to be like, they're going to look and there's nothing but AC units. So let's go to the cons of single family. What are your cons for single family rentals?
Well, like I sort of mentioned earlier, like I have 17 units. I had 17 units, and I started buying all single families until I bought my duplex and my fourplex. But all the rest of my units were single families, and I was driving all over the place. The maintenance issues don't decrease when you have more units or if they are single family. They're just in different areas. So having the 48 unit, having Grace Valley, the maintenance issues are still coming in. We still get work orders from the tenants. This broke, that broke. This is going wrong, whatever. But my maintenance guy can go into unit 2 and then over into unit 8 and then over into unit 13. It doesn't it's all right there. But if one of my units in Pittsburgh goes down, then a unit goes, in Homer City goes down, then a unit in Grampian goes down, and guess what? That from Pittsburgh to Grampian, you're talking a 4-hour drive just to fix
right.
a single family, right? That's why I'm actively liquidating my single family units.
Yeah.
Because it's just the maintenance time it takes for me to drive from one unit to the next. It wastes a lot of time.
I
And
agree.
we know time is valuable.
I agree. The second you start scaling, single family rentals doesn't make much sense. It's better idea to start maybe scaling into small multifamily, and then from there scale into larger multifamilies. Or if you have the capital and the knowledge and the team, you can just scale straight into large. Because large multifamilies where you can have all your benefits of the maintenance under one roof and actually
I mean, unless you physically have a buying radius of like 5 miles and you're buying up all the houses that are real cheap in that area, and you're driving around town in one town, then I mean, it would work out okay. I know a few guys who have a large portfolio of 50 plus units of just single family, but they're only in like Indiana borough, or they're only in this small radius of an area, just so that way they can keep it all under their own maintenance means.
right.
They're also doing it all themselves too.
And they probably live in that area too, right? So
They
it's just
do,
like,
yep.
it's like
Exactly.
I can just get in my car and
Exactly.
drive,
They're not
and
getting a
I
maintenance
see
call
it.
and going, oh crap, I have to drive 2 hours. They're getting a maintenance call and go, okay, I'm going to go across the street.
Yeah. One of the downsides I think of having single family is income stream. It's only one income stream. So because it's one income stream, once that tenant moves out, that income stream goes to zero overnight. Don't get me wrong, like Zach mentioned before, it's one of the easiest units to rent if you can get it once you put it on the market. But then that one income stream also needs to cover like mortgage, if you have mortgage on it, insurance, taxes, and everything the other expenses that you can think of for, rental property or having a rental property, right?
Same expenses you would have running your own house. It's just now you aren't living there.
Exactly.
So it's all going to be covered by somebody else. So once you have that vacancy in a single family, you're paying all those expenses and you have no income. You lose all your income on a single family. And it's a lot easier once you start scaling, even in the single family market, to buy more, and then you're not as concerned with a vacancy.
Right. I agree. I think another con for single family is it is slower. You do scale slower with single family. The reason why this is, how they say, oh, how many doors you have, because, the number of doors means the number of income stream. So each unit that you actually are able to rent, even if you rent it for a little bit less than you could a single family unit, like a 3-2, right? You are getting more income if only one person leaves out. For example, let's say you have 5 single family units and one person leaves, that's almost like 1/5 of your income. But if you have like 2 quadplexes, right? Those are two units that you have to worry about, the maintenance fees that we were talking about. And then one person leaves, that's only like 1/8 of your tenant base is gone. And then you still can use that money to, grow and take care of the building. And it's not going to hurt you as bad as that single family that's suddenly empty. But again,
you gotta look at what your neighborhood's vacancy rate is. So if your neighborhood's vacancy rate is like 85%, what's 85% of your portfolio?
Right.
Because it could be 1 unit out of 2. It could be, 1 unit out of 3. When once you're scaling it, so it's a lot easier to pay your bills and make an income when you have more units, because that vacancy rate realistically doesn't hurt as much when you have more units. If you have 1,000 units and you're at 85% vacancy rate, yes, at that 1,550 units out of that 1,000 would be great income, but you still pay your bills on the other 850.
And then that does mean that the last thing, right? The cash flow per door is very thin in some markets. It might work in Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh is a really good cash flow market, but markets like where I'm from in Florida, it's not going to fly. You probably won't even break even. You'll be negative. And then you'll be banking on just appreciation of the property you purchased. Well, you could just do the same thing and then get a small multifamily. And let's segue into the small multifamilies. This is the units that I'm purchasing currently, small multifamily. I like it. Those are your 2 to 4s. And remember, anything under 5, because it can't be above 5. I like small multifamilies for an investor who wants to get in the game and wants to do either house hacking, which is a really good really good way to use small multifamilies, or just want to, try your hand at investing and want to manage it yourself to build your property management skills. So small multifamily, in my opinion, is really, really good for that. Do you have any pros and cons for that, Zach?
That's exactly how I'm pushing my kids to go to do first, right?
Really?
Jordan is going to go to college soon. Goodness gracious.
So
Yeah,
fast,
I
right?
know, right? And like she's only a freshman right now, but I mean, it's going to be fast. By the time we're ready to kick her out, I want to make sure she's ready to not just go and rent her own apartment in whatever college town that she's going to go to, but actually know where she wants to go to. And it gives us time to look at a property to buy a 2 to 4 unit building. That way she's starting out better off, or she's starting out ahead of the investment game.
Yeah, that's really good, actually. That's a really good idea.
She talks all the time about going to college and working and school and getting her a 2 to 4 unit property where she can live in one and rent out the other ones is actually going to help subsidize whatever she's thinking about working.
Exactly.
And that way she can focus
Subsidize
on school
that, as well as it helps her with
wants to do all the things
that knowledge that
that
something that you don't know when you're going to school
environment
and stuff,
of
you can make
school
money from just investing,
activities and sports and
starting young, asking
everything.
The right questions
she's
at that
all
age.
in it.
Puts
I'm
you
sure she'll
way
do a social club as well.
I think what else? There's my pro for the the small multifamily is that you can use an FHA loan on a small multifamily.
Yeah, you can still use FHA loans.
Yep, and because you can do that, it allows you to start in small, right? Even if it's low, and then if you can get a quad or even a triplex, that's 2 sources of income, especially if you're house hacking, that you can use to pay down that loan. And it's very useful. Very, it makes a lot of sense. I recommend everyone actually look into the small multifamily game. If you're not, because some people can't do it. There's some wives that are like, I don't want to share a wall with a stranger. My wife is okay with it, but there's some people out there, their wives do not want to deal with that. But that's something that
I never really wanted to deal with that anyway. I would never rent in a multifamily. I would never have a neighbor against the wall. I was going to rent in a single. Well, I ended up in a complex at one point in my life.
Same. I went down the same street because I had to talk to her. I was like, look, if you think about it, right, we can live in the area where you want to live, and we just need to share a wall for a couple of people, and then they'll just help us. They'll pay us to actually live there. And after you put it that way, they're like, okay, this is not as bad as it's making it sound. And we could just do it for a year. If we do it for a year, then we could probably get out of it and then get enter that place that you want to go to. Right? So it's not you're doing it forever. The cash flow is stronger for small multifamily, like I said, because multiple units, even two cash flows under one roof is a game changer. And so let's get into the cons for small multifamily. One of the cons that I think for small multifamilies are these units are a little bit harder to find. I don't know if you had that when you were looking in your markets.
It wasn't on my radar at first. Like I said, the first 9 properties I purchased were single families. It's actually the 11 properties I purchased were single families. And then it wasn't until the last 2 purchases that I did a duplex on a 4plex. When I was building my portfolio. It's a lot easier. Like I said, it's a lot easier to manage maintenance wise because again, you're in one building. It's different. It's a different tenant. So when you go from single families to multifamilies, it is a different tenant. Now you do have the crossovers like you and I who did end up in a multifamily that we were renting this place and we're sharing walls. But then there are the families that don't. That they got the guy wants to yard and wants to mow and deal with everything it takes to be a homeowner, but yet can't afford it or doesn't want to deal with the financing portion of it. But then you get someone who knows they're going into a multifamily, who knows they're going to have a neighbor. It's a different type of person. You'll get some families, it's a different type of renter. So I also didn't have much issue renting these out whenever I had a vacancy. To me, I treated them very much like my single families. They were just another building that I had to maintain.
I get it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think that's exactly where I would start over. I would start over in the multifamilies, because again, they are the best way to purchase them is the same as a single family because it falls in the same category. So I would start over that way. I would scale a lot faster buying into small multifamilies using the same lending and the same methods that I did on the single families.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said that the tenant quality is a little bit different than single families. Because like you mentioned, you got those people who want to own a home but don't have the funds right now to own it. So renting a single family makes it feel like I'm gonna cut the grass, I'm gonna do that. That can also affect your maintenance costs, right? Because if someone else is cutting the grass, you don't you don't have to cut the grass, right?
Yeah,
But when you
exactly.
have
Exactly.
yeah. So, but when you have those, a little once you start getting to multifamilies, you get those tenants who, especially depending on what type of multifamily you buy, believe it or not, guys, there's like luxury small multifamilies out there, and those tenants expect everything to be done for them, from the cutting the grass to like making sure something comes in on time, like locker boxes for their packages, all this stuff. It's a really different tenant mix, I would say. You can have one tenant that actually takes care of the unit, that does everything well, and wants to buy a house one day, so he's treating the house like it's his. And you get another tenant that knows it's an apartment complex or a multifamily, even if it's small, and they're like, I'm not going to take care of this unit. I don't care about this unit. Put holes in the wall, smoke in the unit. Don't even care, because they know that at the end of the day they'll be able to leave, and it's not their problem. So it's that the mix of the tenant quality, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the class of unit, depending on where the property is located and or the market class, you can get a really different mix of people.
Yeah, classes, absolutely. Yeah,
yes.
I mean, when you're first starting out in multifamily, I mean, unless you have the financing and the lenders behind you, you're probably going to end up in C classes. I wouldn't go D classes. I stay away from those, but C classes in the multifamily area. And I just basically talk about neighborhood, right? What neighborhood are you in? I'm not downtown Pittsburgh. I'm on the outskirts.
We're going to go into the last type of property, the one that it's my dream to get to someday, the large multifamily units. These are the 5+ units. These, in my opinion, is the big leads. These are where everyone needs to aim towards. Some people just jump right into the big leads and they either sink or swim. And I've been seeing some deals out there that are crazy cheap because these people have jumped in early and not realizing that the waves here are big. What are your pros and cons for these large multifamilies? Let's start there.
Well, and that's the thing. So like I said, I bought a C-class neighborhood. I bought outskirts of Pittsburgh, 48 units. It is a lot to manage. When I was managing the properties I had before I purchased Grace Valley, I didn't have to have a team. Right? We did it all ourselves. I didn't have to have this team in place. So we purchased and we went, oh crap, now we're building a team. So we're building a team, we're renovating a property, we're doing all of this all at once, but we get the team established, we're working to it so the property is being stabilized, and we're getting it done. But that's where a lot of people can fail. You can't do it all on your own anymore.
That's true. That's 100% true.
You have to have that team. You have to admit to yourself that you can't do it yourself. You have to go through and say, hey, I need to rely on some other people, bring them in there, grow a team, grow those relationships. Because not only can you not do the work yourself, you can't, I mean, unless you, like I said, unless you got some trust fund or you come into a lot of money and you win the lottery and don't spend it on frivolous things.
Right.
You're talking with investors. You're talking about people who will go in with you and purchase with you. You have to build those relationships.
Yes. Yeah, I think one of the biggest advantages is the scaling. Family, like large multifamily, it's not even close. It's one of multifamilies that, or property rentals, that scales the quickest and the fastest. You're talking about, like, if you can get up to like 20, 50, 100 units, that's 100 sources of income at 90% or 80% of occupancy. That's that's 80 doors, right? Of people paying you rent to be there. So that is, and you're saying, because like you said, you do need that team, but that's a lot of opportunity that you have in a unit that you wouldn't have in like those smaller units, right? The smaller multifamily.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to grow. Like when you go and acquire a multifamily, it's a lot easier to scale, because when you're talking investing, you're talking doors. You're talking how many doors do you have?
Right.
We understand doors more than we understand houses, right? So I have 6 houses, but yet 3 of those are multifamily. So how many doors do those have? So when I'm saying I have 78 doors, you can understand that I have 78 units. I have 78 different tenants. I have 78 different leases. I need a team in place to do that. And I don't want to contradict you when you say like the number of units, the largest, is the best advantage to multifamily, but alternatively, I would just have to say the relationships you build when buying, purchasing, and maintaining these multifamily properties are the best advantage.
No, yeah. What I mean, like the number, because what I mean by it's the best is because at that point you're not doing it alone, like you mentioned, right? And because
Yeah.
you're not doing it alone, you build those teams and you build those relationships that will help you scale significantly quicker than you doing it alone, right? And I've noticed that a lot when it comes to the large multifamily game. When you're working with other people who have all the same goals that you do, it's insane. It's insane.
Oh, absolutely. There's no other thing out there better.
Yep. And another pro for that is these units tend to be based on their income and not comparable sales. So if you get a unit that is doing well, that's renting out a lot and has like 90% occupancy, you don't have to worry about the when someone comes to buy it, they look at the occupancy, they look at the P&L, they don't look at the units next to it, right? They look at how this property sold for this much, this property is making this much money, this is how much it's worth. But there's another flip side to that, right? If you can't get those units rented or occupied or whatever, then your property is worth a lot less in that same ballpark.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm seeing a lot of that even in the market. I'm seeing it where brokers and agents are listing properties at what they could rent at or could be worth.
No, right.
Based on occupancy, based on, market rents, based on, this occupancy rate. But in all reality, an appraiser is going to come to you and say, okay, you have this many units vacant, you have this many units occupied, you have, say you have a 50% occupancy, percentage at the time of purchase, which I did when I purchased Grace Valley Apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And I purchased at 1.2 million.
Okay.
And the appraiser then came back from the bank and said, okay, here's your other valuation. So they did an after evaluation on it. And they said, okay, if you have an average rent of, and you have an occupancy that is market occupancy at 80%, then you're worth $3 million. So right then and there, I bought it because it's at a 50% occupancy, had lower market rents at a lower cost than what it, a lower valuation than what it was going to be valued at when we're done.
Right.
And I'm gonna bet that my valuation of $3 million on that first appraisal is going to be low compared to what we're actually renting it.
That's awesome. But that's good. And that's the way you can buy it at a discount and then, change management and get your money back.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So some of the cons, let's talk about the cons, because yes, it's really good. It's the best. It's the big leads. It's where everyone wants to get to, but we need to tell them the cons of large multifamily units. And I'm going to say the barrier to entry, like you mentioned before, it takes a significant amount of financing and capital to get into large multifamily, especially if you want to start scaling. And typically banks expect, unlike the smalls, the single families where you can buy FHA, typically banks expect a 20 to 25% down payment for these large multifamilies.
Yeah, you're not looking at just a 20% down payment anymore. You could be looking at 25. You could be looking at 30.
Right.
Depending on what the bank says that they want to lend, based on what they deem the risk is.
Yes, exactly. And then the complexity goes up too, right? Based on how you need to know how to underwrite the property. You need to know who the property manager is going to be. Put that in your property to make sure it doesn't fail. And then there's legal complexities too, because now that there's multiple units. I mean, if like we mentioned before, if the boiler goes down in one unit, maybe it's just one guy, you can get it fixed. But if it's like it's affecting everyone, then that's a lot of people suddenly out of hot air during winter, and that can get you into some serious legal trouble that you need to now deal with, right?
Yeah,
so it's stuff like that you need to make sure that you're
exactly
keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's a lot harder to get into, like you said, and I would say the biggest hurdle that I had to come across was realizing that, again, I can't do it myself, and not just realizing I can't do it myself, but to actually let go of things. I have a hard time letting go.
Right.
And what's going on and everything, and to the point where I'm hands on pulling the toilet still. I know investors out there are out there going, I don't want to plunge a toilet. No, I'm faced with the ground on those toilet bolts, pulling that toilet myself to figure out what's going on. And I have to be like, I can't do that anymore.
That's kind of good though. So, you like to be hands on, and don't get me wrong. A lot of people say, "Hey, I don't want to pull the toilet," but you being able to be hands on and do it yourself allows you to not only have that connection with your residents or your tenants, but also connection with your property. There's so many people that just don't do anything, that they don't know what's going on in that property.
Granted, yeah, that is
yeah.
I mean, that is an advantage. I do take advantage of that aspect of things too, because you're right. There are some people out there who are like, I don't know how this property works.
Right.
I
Or
mean,
what's going on.
I mean, I could tell you right now, to no discredit, because she runs a lot of stuff, important stuff that I can't deal with in the systems. But if you put my wife on the property, she's gonna look at the property and go, okay, they're buildings. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, they're buildings. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but I can look at it and say, okay, I can tell you how the water pipes are ran. I can tell you where the sewer lines go. I can tell you how it's built, because I've been hands-on. I've been in the property. I've been in there. I can tell you what's going on, what's, what needs to get fixed, what's okay to continue on for a little while longer, what I patched, what I didn't patch, what we're going to do in the future.
Right. And that's good. So you shouldn't be so hard on yourself that you want to be hands-on. Maybe you need to take some step back on doing everything.
I do need to take a step back. I have to. And that's the thing. If I'm going to scale, if I'm going to scale the size of the portfolio that I want, right? The next property, I'm not going to be able to be hands-on at Grace anymore, because I'm going to be hands-on at the next property.
Exactly.
At the next one after that, I have to let those other ones go.
Basically,
So
exactly. You have to move with what you're working, which is, well, how are they expecting? But then if someone asks you, hey, this Grace toilet's not working, you know, I changed that toilet. Why is it not working? What happened? So it's good. It's good to have that knowledge. Now let's shift gears here and let's talk about rental strategies. So we just finished talking about the unit types, the small single family, small multifamily, and then large multifamily. But there's actually rental strategies that you can use in each of these that significantly change how that unit can perform. A good example of this is short-term rentals in a single family in Florida. Now, buying that single family to long-term rental, when you having someone live in it for long term, let's say 12 months, probably doesn't make that much sense. However, if it's like near the water and you turn it into a short-term rental, now that single family might outperform what you would get in as a long-term rental game. So,
right.
This is me jumping a little bit ahead of the curve here, but these rental strategies, there's three of them that we're going to talk about here today, which is the long-term rental strategy, which is what I prefer in a lot of my units. I'd rather have long-term tenants. I usually won't buy anything unless it's long-term. Then there's the mid-term rental game. That's the midterm rentals. You're thinking about maybe student housing. They come over for
for
a little bit of they come over for a couple months, 6 months out of the year, and then they leave. Sometimes you can get like nurses that come in for midterm rentals. That's really popular for them. They come just to check out that work at that hospital that's nearby for a couple months and then leave. And then you have your short-term rentals. Short-term rentals actually became really popular because of Airbnb and VRBO. These are the short-term rental kings right now, and they can outperform long-term rentals, but they also have a higher risk, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think there?
Well, I mean, I can tell you from both ends of the long-term versus the short-term and the mid-term aspects of things. So yeah, I'm mainly in the long-term rental space. I'm looking at a year lease minimum, right? Sometimes I'll do a 6-month lease depending on circumstances, depending on the risk the tenant may pose to me or their statement. So a 6-month lease will tell me, will help me say, okay, in 6 months, do I want to continue on with this tenant? After that, we're looking at the midterms. I actually have property management experience in student rentals.
Really?
I used to work for a property management company. Nikki used to work for a property management company that did student rental properties. And I also know the other side of the student rental property too, where I actually was a contractor that the managers would call to fix and turn these units. I tell you what, the things I saw
in the student rental properties, it's that bad.
Student rentals. I mean, things I see in general, it's crazy, but
they're kids.
In student rentals, it's just it's a risk that I don't want to take. Now, there are companies out there are people out there that only do student rentals, and they have it down, and they've built those systems, and that's all they do is student rentals. And it's not something that I want to get into. Again, I like being hands-on, which means I can't do 100 turns in the 3-month period, you know?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So the risk of the short term, the midterm rental is that you have a shorter time, you have more turns, more conversion rate. You have these people coming in and out, and they don't care as much, especially the students. They're going to go to college, they're going to go and party, they're going to go break things, holes in the walls, paint peeling off walls, just beer
Doesn't matter
bottles
to
stuck
them.
in walls.
So let's actually jump into it then. So let's start with the same things we did with the single family, multifamily, and large multifamily. Let's do with the long term, midterm, and short term. Pros and cons, right? So
Yeah.
for long term, the pros, what would you say the pros are for long term tenants?
You don't have to worry about so much about the property. A lot of those tenants think of the property as their home, so they're going to take care of it. Right, a lot of them are going to take care of their unit, which actually helps you out. But I have a tenant right now at Grace Valley who's been there for 10 years. She's like, I don't want to leave. I'm staying here. I don't care whatever you want to do. Here's this, here's that. I know the property. I know the people. Great. Then I got people, that are moving in with families too, because it's a nice place. Everything's taken care of. Single moms is a big one. Single moms is a big one for that place because everything is taken care of. And they're going to find a place. They want to find a place unless they're going to bounce from place to place. And like I said, they're moving in. So I'm not quite sure. But once you have a tenant for about 2 or 3 years, you have them for 10 years.
Oh, really?
Technically, on average, you move on average about every 7 years.
That makes sense.
Your average mortgage term is not term, but length of someone paying mortgage before they refinance or sell or buy a new one is 7 years. So you have someone moving in, about 7 years. And that's what I want. I want people in there that I'm going to get to know, that I know are going to take care of the property, that I know are going to enjoy the area, the community that I'm building, that want to stay. It's less work for me.
Right.
I go in and I'll fix maintenance issues. Oh, the sink broke. This is leaking. This is broken. Oops, my kid accidentally bumped into the wall and it's going to crack and I have to patch some drywall. Not a problem. I want that over the midterm. Every June, July, and August, I'm going into units and patching and painting and getting ready for the new occupant. Yeah,
that's the thing I was going to say, right? For the pros for me, for the long-term rentals, is management is usually minimal compared to the other strategies, because you have to understand turnover is as a rental investor, real estate investor, turnover is our biggest expense. So whenever we get that turnover coming in, we have to pay for someone to check the unit, clean the unit if it's dirty or broken, fix whatever's broken, and then get it back on market to then rent it. And then if you have a turnover again, then you have to do everything, again. So having management being minimal for your long-term tenant, once the tenant moves in, they pay rent monthly, and you only have to handle maintenance requests if they send it in. Usually they don't, but you need to train your tenant to send it in. I also think
that's one thing too. You need to train tenants to send in maintenance requests. Yes. You should be the one doing maintenance. You should be the one doing the inspection. You should be doing inspections in general, but you should be the one doing maintenance. Because some people aren't going to tell you about maintenance issues because they're like, oh, I'll live with it. That's okay. I'll just live with it. And some people are going to break things that they're not going to tell you that should be fixed right away.
Right. Yep. Right. I also like the long-term tenants. A pro for long-term tenants is stability. You have if you can get a 12 months lease, that's 12 months of predictable income that you can say that you're going to get for those 12 months, right? That's what the lease says. That's what you can underwrite for. And that is really, the banks love seeing that.
Yeah.
And another thing that I like about the last pro that I like for long-term tenants will have to be, you can screen your tenants. Tenant screening is a lot more in-depth with long-term tenants. From credit scores.
You screen them on your midterms as well.
Okay. Yep. Okay, that's good. Yep. I didn't know that. Yeah, but you have like income verification, rental history, background checks. And when you find a good tenant,
a lot of times on midterms, you don't have a rental history. You don't have a credit history. And if they don't, you require a cosigner. You require a guarantor. Usually the parents will sign.
Right. And then we can jump into the cons of long-term tenants. And this is a con, but in my opinion, it's a pro as well. But your incomes are capped for these tenants for at least.
There's a ceiling based on the market's rental rate in the area.
Yeah. Then you also have, and then the last thing besides incomes being capped is evictions are a risk. You can get a long-term tenant
definitely
that's
your
really
market.
good.
Definitely know your eviction procedures in your market, because if you don't know them, you can get yourself in big trouble.
Yes.
No, you cannot evict a tenant by taking the door off the hinges. That's not something that you can do.
Exactly. And depending on your state, it could take up to months to get that person out of your unit, especially if they sign on long-term.
Yeah, based on the market, based on the state you're in, you can go, in Pennsylvania, you have a 10-day notice, and then you have, 7 to 15 days before you get a court date. At that point, if you win, they get 10 more days to move out. If they file an appeal, if they don't move out after that 10-day period, you have to file for possession, and then they have 10 more days to move out. At that point, then they can be physically removed by the constable. So you're talking, you're already over a month and a half.
Over
into
a month,
yep.
month and two.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. But
and then that's if it goes smoothly.
That's a short period of time. Yeah. If you go in and they file an appeal, it could be months. But that's a short period of time compared to my other partners' investment properties in Massachusetts, who you have like 30-day notice, and then something like 30 days to get a court date. It can be up to 4 months just to get an eviction hearing.
Wow.
You have to know your market. You have to know your area. And Pennsylvania being a pay and stay state, you can file for eviction. They can be late back on rent. You could be awarded the judgment on rent, but they can be told to pay and they can stay. So if you actually want them out, you actually have to file for the eviction of the judgment, and you have to file for a lease violation in order to file for possession.
Right, exactly. And then the last con of this is a long-term tenant is usually the least profitable of the three. You probably make more money on a midterm and short term. But let's jump into midterm.
There are higher rental rates on those, because you're definitely looking at your midterms as you have a 3-month period there that you're vacant. But it might be more of an illusion, because if you're looking at a student house, and you're renting it out for $1,200 a month to a long-term tenant, but the students are out there going, I want this. You can tell them, oh, it's this much per semester. So it's, $2,500 per semester. And that's like a 2.5 to 3 month period. And you might raise the rents up a little bit more based on your semester period, and you average it out over the course of the year, you are probably getting about the same.
Right. Right. So let's jump into the midterm rentals. What are your pros and cons for midterm rentals?
So I do own a short-term rental in, you're talking midterms.
Midterm rentals. Yeah. So I see one of the pros is like higher rents. You can get higher rents for
you can get higher rents on midterms. But like I said, they can average out over the course of the year to be about the same. Your income wise, their higher rents cover pretty much your conversion rate, your turnover rate, and your repairs.
And depending on what you're actually, because we're mostly focusing on student housing here, but midterm rentals also mean like traveling nurse, corporate relocation, insurance claims, for displaced families. If you can get those type of midterm rentals, you're talking about basically you can get a tenant base that's a little bit higher quality than just student housing. So you did mention a lot about student housing for midterm rentals, but there are some midterm rentals where it's like, traveling nurses, corporate relocation, insurance claims for displaced houses. And those are kind of like remote workers. Those are kind of like the higher quality for midterm rentals.
You're right. Yeah, they are. Yeah. And you can find those tenants. Usually you find them on a site called Furnish Finder. I think there's a couple other ones too, but those are people who are going in to a city to work for a little while, but they want a furnished unit. They want a furnished apartment. So you have to have it furnished for them when they move in.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it does give you a little bit more flexibility because you're not locked into a 12-month lease, right? So you have that flexibility to like, hey, I can probably turn this into a long-term or turn it into a midterm or even short-term, depending on what your game is, right? Or what you're trying to do in that market at that time. And then I would say that another pro for midterm rentals is your eviction risk is a lot lower.
Right, because they want to move out. They want to move out and go to the next job, right?
Yeah, right. What are your cons for midterm rentals?
My experience in midterm rental, like I said, is students. I haven't had much experience with traveling workers, although at this point in the market area, we're actually getting a data center down the street. So we have a construction company coming in to actually build this data center for like 2 to 3 year period. So we're getting a lot of supervisors right now moving into the area, and we're going to get a lot of influx of the labor crew coming in here soon too. So that'll be interesting to figure out how that's going to work.
I think the cons for me for midterm rentals is exactly something like you said. Marketing is different. You can't just post this on like Zillow or apartments.com. You need to find a specific source that needs to have is source for midterm rentals. And again, some midterm rentals, they expect it to be furnished.
Is one of them that I know of.
Yeah. And then, like you said, it needs to be furnished. So that's an upfront expense that you need to put per unit, somewhere about $3,000 to $10,000 per property to have that unit furnished and ready to go for that midterm rental. Yeah. And then the other con that we mentioned before with student housing is turnover is a lot higher. and turnover
and they also
is
require some furnishes as well. Like they want it to be furnished too.
And then our last one, the pro con, this is the one that I think most people are going to be interested in, is the short-term rental game. What are your pros for short-term rentals, Zach?
So as I jumped the gun earlier and I started talking, I do have one short-term rental in Myrtle Beach, and we are just over a year in ownership on that one. But what we found is pro, you're going to get outperforming rents in the area for peak season. Peak season for Myrtle Beach, we're coming into that. We're talking rentals started showing up in March, end of March. We're now into April, but we're actually almost booked up for the months of June, July, August, right?
Nice.
And so, but yet when October of last year hit, everything died down. We had nothing. October, November, December, January, February, and like in the beginning of March, we had no income on that unit. We were still paying the mortgage. We were still paying the HOA fees. We were still paying everything else, the electric, all that, paying the heat, but we had no income. There was no income. So you definitely got to look at your market. When's your peak? When's your downtime? And you kind of got to balance that out, right?
Right.
So put an example right now. I mean, I just pulled up my calendar for our Airbnb for just April. We're bringing in a little over $2,800 this month. Okay. So in the month of April, we're talking $2,800. That is not a standard market rental rate for Myrtle Beach on for a 2-bedroom unit for a long-term rental. That's definitely higher than what Myrtle Beach calls for.
Do you think it balances out?
It will balance itself out. Yeah.
Like you're getting peaks, you're getting all these highs, but then at the lows when you're not getting basically anything, does it balance out over the year that you're still profitable?
Right now, we're still working on that. So like I said, we bought last February. We had a poor summer because we were dealing with some other management issues. We took over management of our own property after that. But believe it or not, we had a professional property manager who specializes in short-term rentals in Myrtle Beach managing our unit when we first purchased it. We ended up taking over management somewhere in July. And we actually had a better July, August, September than we had April, May, June. So I have faith this year that we will be able to increase our, peak season income to offset our off-season income. But that's a downside. That's not, we can't look at this and go, we have all that money.
Right, exactly.
We can't look at this and go, I got 10 grand sitting in the account. I actually want to remodel the unit, and I can. But I can't because I have to save that 10 grand for the off season.
The down season.
We know 10 grand is what's going to cost me to
flip
that property.
So, like you mentioned before, short-term rentals, this is the one that has the highest potential income of all the three strategies. Because it has the highest income, it also means that it has the highest expenses. Like you mentioned before, with the units during the downtime seasons when you have no one in those units, you can't get it rented out for the life of you. We have the same experience here in Florida. So in the short-term rentals, you have the potential income is a lot higher than the three strategies. It's like the exact opposite of long-term rentals. Because you have such a high income stream means that you have the highest expenses, because on those down seasons, like Zach was mentioning before he disconnected here, have December, January, March, and then the end of March where you probably can't get that unit rented at all. I have some friends out in Florida who actually have a couple of short-term rental properties. And when they try renting these units during the summer months, they're making bank, basically. They're living a high life. But during the winter months, they're just not renting and not working at all. Zach is back.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Whatever reason.
Yeah, I was just talking about giving more in-depth information about what you mentioned regarding the disparity from the high months versus the low months.
It can be a pain. It can really be a pain depending on your market. So I know a couple other people who have Airbnbs in Myrtle, And I know that some of them also have Airbnbs in ski resorts.
Oh, to make up the difference.
Yep,
That's actually pretty good.
exactly. So they're not too worried about peak season issues because they got a peak season in one and a peak season in the winter on the other, and they're balancing each other out. They're helping each other out, right?
Yeah.
They actually went out and bought one that actually has a peak tourist season in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually clever.
Right.
I think another pro of Airbnbs and the short-term rental game is you can use it for personal. So there's a time where you can block off.
That's actually where we're going for vacation
this
this winter. Not winter.
Hey,
this summer.
That's awesome.
Kids wanted to go to the beach.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I have this. So yeah. So, but the biggest issue I have with short-term rentals.
We can get to the cons.
One of the big reasons why I haven't purchased in Pittsburgh, because I'm waiting to see what's going to happen, is a lot of different municipalities are actually putting different regulations on short-term rentals.
That's true. That's very true.
I have heard of one. I can't remember what it is, what state it's in, but in order to own an Airbnb, the owner has to live within a certain mile radius of it, and they can only have two.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. So I can't remember. I think it actually was in Florida, somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm waiting to see what Pittsburgh does with short-term
regulations are a big risk. Regulations are a big risk, and some cities and municipalities that you mentioned are cracking down on short-term rentals, make it harder to, like, you need to get permits and licensing, occupancy limits. It's not really fair, you know.
Yeah, and a lot of it I think is I read an article the other day of the housing market and the issues in the housing market, and part of it had to do with housing availability, right? So
that's true.
The actual number of housing units we have for families, and we have according to these statistics, we have a discrepancy, a loss. We have less housing facilities than we do the need
people.
And a lot of these municipalities blame short-term rentals or blame renters or investors on this housing crisis housing shortage.
That's an easy target as well.
Yeah, absolutely easy target. And I don't 100% agree, because we're not out here taking these homes and not letting someone live there. We're out here building homes for people. You know, we're
people to live. Exactly.
Using our skills and our abilities to take these properties and make them better, you know, go from Grace Valley's 50% occupancy rate when at purchase to an 80, 90, hopefully 100% occupancy rate when we're done with this. So that's, you know, another 24 people, families having homes. So, but a lot of the regulations are coming for short-term rentals because they're saying that this is the reason we have a housing shortage crisis. And I would say it's a factor. I would say that a lot of people buying these houses and turning them into short-term vacation homes could be a factor. But it's also with Airbnb, VRBO, with all these short-term rental platforms, it's just now more open to the public.
Yeah.
People still have second homes. People still had vacation homes.
Right. I think it's also, so these short-term rental, these Airbnb games, you need to buy in a market to where it actually has a reason for people to go there. I understand like Miami and Myrtle Beach because it's a beach. People want to travel to those locations for a short term and then come back. But if someone wants to move to Myrtle Beach, the short-term rental is two sides of the same coin, I guess, because if you're going to move to Myrtle Beach, that unit that you would probably get as a rental, you probably couldn't afford as a purchase. And taking it away makes it, you could probably buy that property, but then it's going to be sitting there for someone to buy to use as a second home. That's exactly what they're going to buy it for.
We were qualified to purchase property based on the expenses of the property, based on its potential income. And it was already an Airbnb. It was already a short-term rental when we purchased it. So we had evidence of income.
Right.
And we used a loan.
Yeah,
it was a different loan type. But yeah, in order to do that, we had to provide that it does produce income.
All right. So when you're getting into real estate investing, there is no single best property type or best rental strategy. The right move depends on your capital, your market, and your risk tolerance. So I know some people who are just killing it in the short-term rental game because they're okay with that risk, right? They're okay with that high turnovers, and then they leverage it. Like you said, in the winter, they buy the winter locations like Gatlinburg, those really nice places, the ski resorts. And then during the summer months, they have those units in Miami as well, right? But I want to talk to you guys and make sure that you understand that, real estate investing, there's so many ways and stuff that you can do it to make it work. You don't have to do the way Zach and I do is the long-term game. I like long-term game because we're trying to build long-term results.
I would say find something that interests you and just start.
Exactly.
So just start doing something. And if you don't like it, you don't have to pivot. Because again, a short-term rental can become a long-term rental, and and vice versa. But I would say just start doing something. Read books, look at your financing options, learn about the types of loans that are out there, learn about the types, of properties out there. Look at your market. There's a whole bunch of information out there on this, but then do something. Actually purchase it. Find investors. Go to meetups.
Yep. Buy now. That's what everyone says. Buy now. Get something now. Even if it's like something to learn, just get it to learn, man. Make the mistakes while you're small. That's why you don't make it when you get big. But all right, everybody, that's a wrap for today.
Yesterday, but the second best time to buy is today.
Yes, exactly. But that's a wrap for today, guys. We covered a lot of ground here, from single families, small multifamilies, large multifamilies, to property types, from short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Hopefully this gave you some clarity in where you can start your journey and where you want to go. If you got any value from this episode, please share it with someone who you think loves to get into real estate investing, and make sure that you subscribe and don't miss the next one. Until then, I wish you guys luck, and if you have anything else, hit us up in the comments.
See you guys. Thank you.